Everybody says that starting boat projects is like opening a can of worms, and we were like, it's fine, we can handle a can of worms or a few can of worms, but no one really says that it's like opening 100 cans of worms all at once. So right now we are dealing with one of those said cans of worms.
Hey, I'm Kelsey, and this is my husband Patrick. We're scientists and avid environmentalists turned adventure elopement photographers. We've been living in Hawaii for the past 5 years. We're following our dreams and just bought this boat. Her name is Blue Planet, and we're renovating the entire thing. Follow along and watch the transformation as we prepare for epic elopements at sea.
So one of the things we really loved about this boat when it came up as a listing was the fact that it was designed by a very prominent naval architect and designer that's familiar with blue water cruising and building pretty robust boats that can withstand a lot of, different things. It has a center cockpit, it's a catch rig, very versatile, has a lot of tankage for fresh water as well as diesel, so it can go long distances. But basically what we learned now that we have the boat is that there's somewhat of a design flaw, and I don't know if this is true or not, but seems kind of like an oversight with the design, that the tanks themselves were fiberglassed in underneath the floor. So inaccessible, there's no ports to get to it, there's no little hatches to even see what's under the floor. We had no idea what condition these tanks were in. The previous owners had been using a day tank, smaller tank, that is accessible under the stairs. Now, not having access to the tanks wasn't necessarily a big deal for us because we were just planning on using this boat as a day charter, not really doing any long-term oceanic crossings.
At least for now.
At least for now, yeah. So it wasn't really top of our list to even look at the tanks.
So we had the plan to replace the floors throughout the boat. We've shown footage in the past. It was really terrible vinyl that was literally not even stuck to the floor anymore in some places. And then an old poly-ply in the galley, and we got a call from our contractor on the day that he pulled up the galley floor, being your subfloor is rotted through in some places, just completely black, and had termite damage in a bunch of other places.
So since we're redoing the entire floor, we're kind of forced to get into this can of worms now with the tanks. So now that the subfloor has been ripped out, the tanks are exposed, we actually have a good look at what condition they're in, and they're not great. So we have one of the tanks is aluminum, that's the diesel tank. It looks like it's been sitting there for 40 years basically. Don't know how long it's been unused, but there's lots of crusty stuff inside. Doesn't really look like it's easily cleaned, and there's so many different sections of it, baffles. Can't really get into many of the sections to even see or start cleaning it out. And the other one is stainless steel tank, so that's the freshwater tank. There's zero way to even look inside of it, so we have no idea what that one looks like. There's actually a little fitting on the edge that just kind of broke off while I was inspecting it, and then started leaking fresh water into the bilge. Luckily our bilge pump works.
Gross! Not sure how these 40-year-old cans of beans made it under here, but we got to deal with those too. Yeah, so the floor has been sitting open for several weeks at this point and stalling work on the rest of the boat because obviously we can't put anything down without a floor. So we've just been kind of weighing our options and trying to talk to as many people as we can and get quotes on the work to figure out what was the best course of action. And really we were left with 3 options. The first being we could just ignore them. The second was to clean and reline the existing tanks, and the third to take them out and either replace them or do something with that space.
So option one obviously was probably the easiest, to just do nothing and kind of ignore the issue. We didn't really have plans for the space under the floor, so we're fine with just using the day tank. Again, no plans right now to do long-term cruising.
The tanks are already so old as it is that we know that whatever flooring we put down on top of it will likely outlast them, and we're a little freaked out already that some of the fixtures and fittings are already really janky looking, falling off, old, rusty. We don't even know. I'm scared of what's growing in the water tank or could be growing at any of the lines, and it just kind of didn't sit right with us to leave the tanks when we have the opportunity to deal with them.
So the second option would be to reline the existing tanks with a new coating. So there's this chemical paint, epoxy based something. Don't actually know what it was.
Our contractor did a lot of research for us to find a solution. But this was going to be the most costly option. You know, we just don't even know what the inside of the tanks looks like, if they're corroded, and that felt like opening another can of worms.
Yeah, and it's basically like putting a band-aid on a bigger issue.
So what we would have done if we had more time and probably a little bit more money is to take these tanks out and get brand new custom fit tanks to go back in their place. So a diesel cruising tank and a brand new water tank. Unfortunately, our timeline for the boat has already been delayed because of these, and shipping to Hawaii, it takes even longer than it would normally. So we were looking at another 2 to 3 months of the floor sitting open, and we just don't have that kind of time. So obviously we still need water. We need to have water on board and accessible for us, but we're not gonna put it in the floor. The plan right now is to have it custom built for us after we already put in the new seating area, and that way it'll fit. It's going into generally the same area, so we won't have to do that much work with all of the lines coming in and out of it, and we know that it'll be brand new, safe to drink out of, and probably one of the cheaper options, even though we're getting it custom built.
And that's important because we need to be able to access the water tank in order to inspect it periodically, clean it out. So having it under the floor is really not a good idea for us. So we definitely want it to be accessible. Somewhere under the couch is probably the best.
So luckily we were able to find a welder kind of through the grapevine. He's gonna come by tomorrow and he's going to just cut the tanks out haphazardly, whatever way makes sense, and haul it away for us. As you can see, we taped up the windows. It's not the prettiest job, but it should do the trick. He basically told us to protect the windows because you can't rub out any of the spark marks from the glass, and whatever, you know, teak we don't want to be damaged. But right now, the state that the boat's in, everything's going to be sanded and painted after this job anyways. So luckily there wasn't too much prep work for us to do.
Fingers crossed, everything goes well tomorrow.
We're really excited to have the floor in because right now it is definitely a little bit of a dangerous jungle gym. The welder started with the aluminum tank and made pretty quick progress. As soon as the top was cut up, we knew we had made the right call. There was so much nasty gunk inside, there is absolutely no way we would have been able to clean that ourselves.
Yeah, everybody's like, stainless steel and aluminum don't corrode. Oh, the f they don't.
Believe it or not, this is actually our bilge, and it had inches of gross sludge inside. The steel tank was a bit more of a beast to take out, but he made pretty quick progress of that too. Surprisingly, taking both tanks out only took him 1 day, which is absolutely amazing because it would have taken us weeks.
There are definitely some projects we think you should hire experts for, and this is one of them. Next, we got to work scraping and cleaning all that gunk out of the bilge. And we gave it a good scrub down with just some water and Dawn soap. The tanks are out. It feels so good, and clearly we made the right call. Now that the tanks are out, we can move forward with fixing the rest of the subfloor and putting in the flooring on top of that. But before we did that, we decided to meet with our contractor and turn one of the spaces into a really nice storage area. So we're gonna have this for possibly food, we don't know, when we're underway. It feels amazing having the tanks out and knowing that we can sleep easy since this can of worms has now been taken care of, and we can move forward with other boat projects. Join us next time to see what we tackle next.
Owning a boat is like the magic trick where you pull out a bunch of handkerchiefs from your sleeves and it just never ends. The boat projects never end. Anyway.